Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over an upcoming looter shooter called the First Descendant. And if this game looks familiar to you, it's because it was originally revealed as Project Magnum, which was later changed to the First Descendant, being its official title. And their description for this game is the First Descendant is a third-person cooperative action RPG shooter featuring high-quality graphics. Experience the fun of strategic boss fights through a 4-player co-op and various unique characters, exciting gunplay, and looting. A variety of equipment is necessary for growth, and you can obtain them through clearing scenario missions, world missions, and raids where cooperation is crucial. The player becomes a descendant in the game and is given a mission to fight against the invaders for the survival of humans, and to protect the Ingress continent. The player can experience a spectacular story by growing stronger through various missions and stories to finally discover the Descendant's secret. You can also feel the First Descendant's unique atmosphere through high-quality fields developed with Unreal 5 and get a new experience of reality and science fiction fantasy coexisting in one place. Now keep in mind this is being developed in South Korea, so some of these descriptions and information are going to sound a little bit weird. So the First Descendant is going to be a third-person looter shooter made on Unreal 5 that you can play solo all the way up to 4-player co-op. That is a mix of science fiction and fantasy. And they do mention a few bits of the main content you're going to be playing in the game, where you're going to be following a story. There's scenario missions, world missions, and raids, which I don't think they go into more detail, but I do think we get some screenshots that can kind of show what these are going to play like. And you will be choosing from a pretty large selection of different characters that have their own abilities, and I'm assuming their own stories. And we're going to get into that because they do show off a lot of these different characters. And they lay out some of the key features you can expect in this game. So we have 4-player co-op, team up with other players for 4-player co-op strategic battles. Each player's amazing powers and abilities will lead to tactical battles for the win. Again, like I mentioned, this is obviously translated in kind of a weird way, but I think what they're trying to say with this is that playing with other people will give you a lot of different ways and tactics to go about fighting these big bosses and going through these missions. And when we get into the different characters, you'll kind of see that, because it does also seem like they're going with a light Holy Trinity system, where there will be classes that are more like tanks, classes which are more like supports, classes that are full damage healers, and even classes that are more built around crowd control. Charming and unique characters. Play as different characters, each with distinctive concepts and battle styles. Characters will have customizable elements to allow players to support character decoration. Don't miss your chance to play as 10 different characters during the closed beta test this autumn. And that reminds me, if you want to sign up for this beta, just search the First Descendant on Steam. On the actual Steam page, you will be able to request access to the beta, and then they will just enable access for you on Steam when the beta tests come around. So there will be 10 different characters to be able to play during the beta. So we don't know if there's going to be more than that on launch, but we do get to see almost all of those characters already, and we'll be going over that in this video. Exciting battles, dynamic action, multiple skills, and unique weapons. Experience exciting battles with different characters, each with unique skill sets, free movement, and chain actions through grappling hooks, colorful firearms, and additional effects. Players create the battle style they desire. So just trying to explain that characters are going to have their own unique skill sets, so their own abilities. You'll be able to choose between different ones. It does seem like movement is going to be a big part of this game. They've shown off grappling hooks that they mentioned here in some of the footage they've shown, and it seems like movement and traversal is going to play a big part in combat, and they're trying to get across that you will be able to customize your playstyle quite a bit. Battle huge boss monsters with different appearances and abilities. Various powers and difficulties will stimulate the player's competitive spirit as you struggle not to fall in battle. Target the boss's gimmicks to experience a more compact and strategic playstyle. So this is something that's pretty interesting about this, is it seems like a lot of the game, and particularly a lot of the end game, is going to be focused on massive boss fights. So it does almost seem like they're kind of mixing in a looter shooter, kind of with something like Monster Hunter, where a big portion of the game is just going to be focused on fighting these big, massive massive bosses. Also saying there's going to be different difficulties to all those different bosses and different strategies and mechanics that you're going to have to focus on to be able to complete these boss fights. Also, they say this as gimmicks. That does seem to be a Korean way of just saying mechanics. Hopefully what they're saying with this is that the boss fights are actually going to have a lot of mechanics and things you actually have to do during the boss fight instead of just basically a big moving health bar, which can happen in some RPGs. Motivating play and growth. Equip characters with 3 guns, 4 pieces of secondary equipment, and various sub-weapons. Use and change the equipment based on the types of battles encountered. New equipment develops character growth by combining various pieces, enhancing character and firearm stats, or adding a new ability. Obtain new items through clearing scenario missions or in the world missions where cooperation is crucial. Use new items to challenge yourself with more complex tasks. So this is explaining a little bit of what you can expect from the gearing up and the equipping. So right now we know you're going to be able to have 3 weapons, 4 pieces of secondary equipment, and various sub-weapons. Not sure how many of these sub-weapons you'll be able to equip, but they're also mentioning that these different pieces of equipment are obviously going to give you more stats. They're going to enhance your character, probably affecting your abilities in some way. It also does kind of sound like they're hinting at set pieces here, so getting a certain set of armor would do something additional past just giving you more stats, and even mentioning that certain items can actually give you new abilities, which could be pretty interesting. And obviously we're not at all sure how that's going to work. Is it just going to be a weapon gives you a new ability, or maybe you put mods or something like that into your armor or weapons that can give you new abilities? Not sure, but it sounds like they are trying to add a good amount of gearing and progression. And before we get into the characters, I also wanted to mention that this game is being made on Unreal 5, and if you look at a bunch of the screenshots and even some of the footage where it's slower moving, the game looks really good. The character models look really good, and the general overall graphic presentation and quality looks really good. But if you're just looking at the trailers, it may look a lot worse than I think it actually does. For whatever reason, in the trailers, in the gameplay, and even in a lot of the screenshots, it seems like they have motion blur and depth of field cranked up to 1000%, to where a lot of the stuff ends up blurred because they're showing these super fast action sequences using their grappling hook, running all around the map, fighting massive bosses. So a lot of it ends up being blurred. I'm not exactly sure why they chose that for showing off their game in trailers, but I think the game does look really good. Now we do actually get to see 9 out of the 10 characters that should be in the beta, and for 6 of them we actually get a little bit more information. And also they do mention that they will be continually adding in new characters into the game. So I think that's going to be where a lot of replayability and progression comes from, is playing a bunch of different characters, figuring out good builds for all those characters, and finding combinations if you're playing with other people to find the strongest group composition. So first off, we have Lepic, a former soldier, a jovial but reckless war fanatic who uses powerful guns built in his right arm. So his position is wide range dealer, and the position is basically their roles in the game, and his combat concept is uses hand grenades with various effects to defeat multiple enemies. And I think what they're meaning by wide range dealer is heavy AoE damage, focused on being able to take out large groups of enemies, and that's what his focus is going to be. And it does seem like they are being a bit more specific with the different roles of these characters, and if they actually go far into that fantasy and that concept, there could potentially be a lot of different group compositions when it comes to the end game. Because if they go deep into that concept and you have a character focused on AoE, he's not going to be as good as another character on single target damage, which would mean you're going to want a lot of possible characters for different scenarios. Next, we have Viasa, a former criminal gang member with the skill of controlling cold air. Position is debuffer, and combat concept is specialized in limiting enemies' actions. And we do get to see her use kind of a frost tornado in one of the gameplay trailers, but it seems like this character is focused on debuffing, and limiting characters' actions could mean a host of different things, possibly like silences or slows, possibly stuns, but they do have characters that seem to be more focused on specifically crowd control. So possibly reducing the damage they deal, slowing them, maybe silencing them so they can't use their different abilities, and again being very specific with the positions of these different characters. Next, we have Ajax. His body is covered with armor and uses space warp technique that he mastered while lost in the void. His position is bruiser. His combat combat concept is create synergy based on high viability. That combat concept was very much lost in translation because it really doesn't mean anything. His position of bruiser seems like he is going to be a tank or a front line that's there to soak a lot of damage, probably has a lot of melee or close range attacks. And I do think in some of the gameplay, it shows him like jumping into battle and doing like a crash landing. So obviously more of a close range character. I couldn't even tell you what they meant by his combat concept. Next up, we have Bunny. She's a girl with super fast legs attacking with electricity. Her position is nuker. Her combat concept is a character with skill configurations for strong damage. Now, there's a couple different things nuker could mean. First off, it can mean extremely high single target damage. So basically a character you want if you're going against bosses, you have a big damage phase here, you want Bunny. She's going to be able to do the most single target damage. Or this can mean she does super bursty damage. So maybe she has like a setup to do really high damage all at once, or maybe her abilities are longer cooldowns but really strong. So she just does really high damage very quickly and then kind of builds back up to doing another big burst of damage, which is actually a niche that ends up becoming really strong in a lot of RPGs. Next, we have a Jaber, a genius boy who controls the flow of electric current and combats using 2 turrets. His position is utility. Combat concept is summon turrets with various effects such as attacking and recovering. And we actually get to see a little bit of him in the trailer as well. He places up 2 turrets that both have pretty much machine guns just shooting down enemies. And also they mention that he also has turrets for recovering. So it seems like this is the first kind of support character we get. So potentially he could go a full support build where he's just throwing down supporting turrets, healing up his allies, and focusing on that. And there could potentially be other things. Maybe he has turrets that res, or maybe give out ammo or something like that. There's a lot of possibilities with utility or support characters. Then we have Glay. Using the enemies and even her own HP as an energy source, her attacks are fierce but deadly, and her position is close range dealer. Her combat concept is she earns life balls for self-heal when taking down enemies and enters berserk mode, which makes her more powerful. So this character is a close range character, but it sounds like she's going to be a very kiss curse character that once you get the ball rolling, she can be very good at just doing large amounts of damage and destroying a lot of enemies, but she has the downside of her attacks using also her own health as energy sources and being in close range, so she needs to keep healing off killing enemies. And those are all the characters we get specifically named with that extra information, but we get to see 3 more characters that they're working on, and the first is a poison type continuous dealer. So a dot focus class puts up dots and everything, they keep taking damage over time. And assassin concept melee dealer. So a melee assassin, most likely really squishy, but can do really high damage, kind of like a sci-fi rogue, I guess. Then a fire controller concept continuous dealer. So that one's a bit weird, but it seems like a fire class that also has CC and is built around dot damage. And they also do go on to mention in this that in addition to these, they're creating new characters with other various concepts, appearances, and skills. So it seems like a big focus in this game is going to be around adding in a bunch of new characters that will add a lot of replayability. And there was also mention of raids and raid bosses, but we really didn't get any other information on that. But I did want to mention that they do have a chunk of screenshots showing off a handful of these different raid bosses, and they do seem like really massive bosses. They have their own specific attacks and seems to be something that they are focusing on for the end game, and all the bosses do look pretty interesting. But that is pretty much all the information I wanted to go over for the First Descendant. The game does look pretty cool. We have a decent bit of information, but there's still a lot of stuff we don't know. But I am hoping that this game does come out in a good state and is a pretty good game because we don't have a lot of very successful looter shooters. There's only a small handful, and Destiny 2 is probably the only one that has a really successful live service model. But that's all I want to go over, so subscribe if you want to see more the First Descendant videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Comment down below what you guys think about this upcoming looter shooter, and thanks for watching.